Thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll give everybody a couple minutes here to join in. But while we do, I think it'll be great to kick off with some introductions. I am so excited to talk about this. Obviously, very near and dear to my heart and what I work on all day. But joined by the amazing Chris from Winning by Design. Chris, do you want to give maybe a quick shout out and an intro, let the people know who you are? And
Sure.
we can get this
My
thing
name
on
is
the road.
DeNoia. I am managing director at Winning by Design. I work also, I'm heading up our tech partnerships, which is how I got introduced to Mark. A little bit of background for me is I used to carry a bag. I used to be a salesperson. I've been a VP of sales, chief revenue officer. I've hired Winning by Design 2 times to train my sales team before joining them as an instructor, then a revenue architect, and now as a managing director. So something I'm very passionate about is helping salespeople. When I was also working with entrepreneurs, I realized that if you don't love your clients, you are not going to be successful. And I happen to love salespeople, and particularly sales managers. So that's why I love doing what I'm doing here. I also know that process is important. Winning by Design is based on science and process, but I'm a big believer in mutual action plans. So I've actually helped create the module of mutual action plans for Winning by Design because it's such an integral part of enterprise sales. Well, that's my self-intro.
I love it. What are you going to be for Halloween?
I'm looking for ideas. That's what I was doing. So I'm gonna be whatever matches with my 10-month-old son.
There you go.
And Crystal, thank you for putting the LinkedIn. Everybody, if you're not connected to me yet, go to LinkedIn, shoot me a connection. Would love to make your connection here.
Awesome person to know. Highly recommend it. Chris, thank you so much. And for everybody else, my name is Mark Fershteyn. I'm the CEO of Recapped. We were one of the first customer collaboration platforms. And really what that means is it's a really easy way to manage your deal and make sure that you're able to collaborate with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. And as we'll talk about that today, I think it's single-handedly one of the most important things going on in the landscape of sales tech today, right? We went through a couple revolutions. We'll talk about what the revolution that we're in today and what that means for your business, and hopefully how you're able to leverage these kind of tools. But a little bit of background before this, I was heading up a couple sales teams and also carried a bag for a very long time. And Recap was really just born out of personal frustration for me. Never thought I'd have a business. I just wanted to solve a problem that I had with my team, which was lack of process and deal falling apart at the finish line, right? Spending 9, 10, 12 months getting a deal to the finish line just to have it fall apart because of misalignment or because people weren't on the same page, in my opinion, was something that should be completely avoidable. And it really, I guess, got me to a frustrated point where I went and set out to kind of solve this for myself, first and foremost. So really excited to talk about this, and we can jump right in. Yeah, and please, Chris and I can, talk about this for hours. If you have questions, throw them in the chat, use the Q&A feature. Let's make this as collaborative as possible, right? And throughout this, we'll be jumping between slides and also just free-form conversation. But as far as agenda for today, we're going to talk about what are mutual action plans, right? Why to use them, when to use them, how to use them, and then if you are interested, should you leverage a platform for this, or will spreadsheets be enough? And we'll kind of talk about the differences. And I think personally why all the reasons you should leverage something, but something is better than nothing, right? And I think a rising tide lifts all boats in this. And at the end of the day, we really are here to solve our customers' problems, right? That's, I think, the most important piece. Awesome. Let's jump in. All right.
All right, Mark, I'll just ask you, we'll start off. What is a mutual action plan?
Without looking at the screen. Yeah. So, the way I think about it is, the world has gotten more and more complex, especially over the last couple of years, right? Sales have gotten more complex. There's a million moving pieces. In order to make sense of that complexity and really to simplify, I think a mutual action plan is really just a client-facing project plan, right? It helps you manage your deal, stakeholders, and timeline. And I think it's literally just a way to make sure everyone's on the same page. What about you?
Well, Yeah, I think I think that's exactly what it is. It is a plan that helps your customer get through impact. Right. So I'm going to jump around a little just to make it clear what I mean by that, because we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And Darren, yes, we will get a replay. We should be posting this recording, right? So we think about, why do customers buy your solutions, right? A lot of sales reps they fall in love with the technology that they're selling, especially now. Like, we have an AI, ML, like we have neural networks to do all of these other things. That's not what the customers are buying, right? They're buying a solution to their problems. They're buying impact, right? So on their buyer's journey, they want to get to impact. And the first principle for SaaS businesses, this is the first principle, this is really important to understand, is that recurring impact is a recurring revenue is a function of recurring impact, right? If you don't continually give impact to your customers, they will churn. They will churn. How expensive is churn? We're going to get to that in a moment. But so your customer's buyer's journey, everyone goes through this buyer's journey. And remember, this is your customer's journey, not your interaction, not the sales journey, the customer's journey. Customer figures out, oh, I may have a problem, right? How do I solve my problem? How do I select that solution? Okay, I'm committed. This is closed one, right? Now I need to onboard and get impact, right? A mutual action plan is designed to help the customer through that journey to get to impact, not to close the sale, where most people use them, right? And then other people use an onboarding journey for a mutual success plan or something after the close is made. We're going to talk a little bit later why you need to introduce these much earlier, right? So impact, critically important. Bessemer does some great research on this about payback periods, right? Recurring impact. These are average payback periods based on ARR scale, right? Based on your ACV. Look at these. Even high velocity, like 15 months, 24 months, 20 months, 21 months to just recover the cost of acquiring a customer, right? So conservatively think most of the time it takes 2 years to get back the cost of a customer for this, which is why if they're churning because they're not receiving impact, because we didn't have a good plan to get through onboarding to get them to where they need to go, we're losing money on them. And this go ahead.
Sorry, Chris. I love this, right? And I think, you bring up such a really great point that it doesn't matter how great your solution is. If you don't have impact and success for the customer, they will not renew, right? And especially in today's climate where every single budget line item is being, double looked at, everything is being questioned, and you need to see real value and, to your point, real impact, right? And one thing that kind of came to mind for me is, we always obsess over a sales process, right? How do we make it repeatable? How do we make it scalable? How do we make sure it's the same every time? But that's not what happens out there, right? You talk to 10 customers, you're going to get 15 different buying journeys, right? And so being able to unite and unify the buyer journey with your sales process, that's really the goal of the mutual action plan. Right? I'm sorry, I think I cut you off mid-spiel there.
Yeah, no. I was just going to finish the point that I've tried to make also on this slide is the CAC is just the first payback part of the payback period, right? To be a successful business, most people need at least 3-to-1 return on CAC, at least 3-to-1. So that means when you look at this churn rate, right, at 2 years, think of the average 1 to 2 years, you need at least 6 years out of that customer to be considered a successful customer, at least 6, right? Most people want 10, a 5-to-1 ratio. 4-to-1's pretty good. Anything below 3-to-1 is not may not be considered a great investment. So we need to hold on to these customers for a long period of time. One of the reasons why a lot of people are going into the enterprise, so they want to move up market, they tend to churn less, right? SMB, mid-market, those companies get acquired, they go out of business, there's a natural rate of churn that they go through. In the enterprise, there's a much lower rate of churn, so we need to get them to impact and keep that impact faster. That was the big takeaway there.
No, I love it. So question for you then, mutual action plans. Are they a new phenomenon, right? Like it seems like all of a sudden we're hearing about these. What are your thoughts on this?
I think they've been around forever. They've been around forever. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old now. I've been doing sales in one form or another for over 30 years. And we used them early in my career as well. If you read any of the older books, people have been using them there as well. Once sales started to become codified with sales processes, people started using mutual action plans. They are not new. They are something that that the most successful organizations I work with use them, including some of our customers. And I had a great quote from one of the customers that we work with. One of the reps asked them, I put this in the LinkedIn. They said, well, which deal should I use a mutual action plan for? And the SVP's response was, only the ones you want to close. Only ones you want to close. Because we're going to show you in a little later that the mutual action plan is going to help you spot flaws in the deal flow right now that prevent things from closing, as Mark said, 12 months into a sales cycle and they fall apart at the last minute. In retrospect, when you go back and you look at the plans, you can see, this is why it failed, because we skipped a step. We skipped a step because we did not have a process for it.
Yeah, and I mean, the other piece too is not only have they been around forever, but I think they've really been centralized in the most resourced and the most, you know, the companies that had the most potential to leverage them, right? The Oracles of the world, the Salesforces of the world. Small startups weren't able to not only implement them, but they didn't really know how, right? There weren't any really tools, maybe a spreadsheet here and there, but you really need, in the old days, you really needed this kind of enablement behind it and this engine to really make it successful, right? And I think what I'm really excited about now is if we think about it, a lot of these platforms that are coming out are democratizing this kind of superpower, right? The ability to collaborate and the ability to manage these deals, right? And I think excellent segue kind of on why we should use mutual action plans, right? I teased on this a little bit earlier, but I think for me, especially in today, I don't think if you are doing a mid-market or enterprise sales motion, really anything over 25,000, I don't think you can go to market without the competitive advantage of what a mutual action plan is, right? And there's a couple of reasons for it. First and foremost, I think, we probably can all relate to this, right? Tool stack has bloated. We have a million different tools. Each one's piecemeal for something different. Some of them integrate, some of them don't. We have so many different stakeholders involved. And really what it ends up being is just people talking past each other, right? The average seller, they're managing a dozen different stakeholders across a dozen different platforms, right? So how do you make sense of that, right? You have 10 reps managing 10 deals and with 10 stakeholders, with 10 channels, right? Like it's really easy for things to get lost in the shuffle, right? And I think the other big point that I always try and highlight is when we think about kind of what's evolved, right? You have to also think about the evolution of the buyer journey, right? We talked about this. Like, what is your buyer going through as they're evaluating 3 or 4 platforms? What is the experience that they're facing, right? Because, and this ties really well into it.
Yeah.
We have this, if the slides will load, right? We invest so much at the top of the funnel. But when we're still managing deals and driving the impact for the customer, like you mentioned earlier, spreadsheets, email, and internal CRMs, right? And I think this is where you should be using mutual action plans, not just to get the deal signed, but to get it to impact, like you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Okay, so one of the questions in the chat, like Frank, yes, I'll mention Medic when it comes to mutual action plans and where it happens. Let me sort of jump into, like as Mark said, the buyer's journey. This is critically important for us to understand the buyer's journey as it goes across, right? The buyer's journey is like, as we said, people know they have a problem, they educate, they go into selection. We use different types of sales motions depending on where the customer is in the buyer's journey, right? If a customer comes in and you're doing a little bit of a higher velocity or maybe mid-market, and they've compared you to competitors, or they know what the problem is, and they already have a decision criteria or maybe an RFP already set up. Now we start getting into solution selling. How is ours positioned against others, right? Consultative selling is if somebody usually comes in and they say, well, I know I have a problem. My past awareness, I know I have a problem, right? But how do I solve it? Or what can you do for me? And that requires some more conversation. You want to diagnose the problem, then you want to show how your solution solves that, then you close the deal. Provocative deals, though, are usually the more challenging ones where the customer you're talking to doesn't know that they have a problem yet. They don't have awareness, they don't have pain yet, or they don't know that your solution is going to solve a big problem. So you need to provoke them into an awareness that they say, okay, I have to solve this right now, and then move them through the rest of the buyer's journey. So with winning by design, we obviously use a lot of blueprints. Right. So blueprints for consultative and solution sellings are pretty straightforward, right? A lot of people use diagnosis for a call. Diagnosis, you get a prospect, you have a conversation. How are you doing this today? What pains do you have? Trying to figure out what the rational and emotional pains are, right? And then we're selling on impact, right? We do that in the discovery call. We demo how our solution solves their problem, uncover what they're looking for in a decision criteria, proposal, trade, commit, right? Solution selling usually just comes in at the end of this. In a larger enterprise deal, provocative selling made by a committee, made by more than one or two people, the blueprint changes and it changes completely, right?
Absolutely.
Right. You usually have this discovery call or demo with a user or a champion or somebody who really is trying to solve a problem, right? Then you need to uncover the decision process. Well, how is this purchase made within your organization? Who are the stakeholders that I need to align around this? How are they going to evaluate it? What's the decision criteria? In some cases, do you need a proof of concept? And then you get to proposal and trading, right? For most of us early in the going, it feels like uphill selling. It feels like uphill selling, like, oh my God, there's another stakeholder involved. Somebody else came in, right? If we don't get to the stakeholder alignment, this is when deals collapse. As Mark said earlier, you get 12 months into a deal and you're like, oh, what happened? It's like, I forgot to identify our stakeholder. I didn't identify the saboteur in the decision process. I didn't find any of these, right? So Frank, I think some of these are going to these are some of the D's in MEDDIC as well, right? The executive buyer in MEDDIC is usually part of the decision process as well. The metrics are going to be part of the decision criteria, decision process, decision criteria, et cetera. So there is a blueprint map from MEDDIC that we have that I'm happy to share at some point. So this is a typical blueprint for how enterprises or complex deals buy, right? So what this means then, Mark, where do we need to introduce a mutual action plan?
As early as possible, right?
As early as possible, right?
And
what we say is typically around here before you start gaining more momentum, right? You typically want to introduce a mutual action plan, right? When you need to understand how decisions are being made in an organization, who are the stakeholders. We use a mutual action plan to uncover the people that are important in this buyer's journey within the company so we can address it and get ahead of it and not wait 12 months to uncover that we missed somebody. Mark, you have something to add?
Yeah, no, I think one of the most common, because I have these conversations every day, right? I think one of the most common mistakes that we see across organizations is really just introducing them too late. Oh, hey, we're starting to get in procurement or legal. Let's now create a mutual action plan. You're about 3 months too late, in my opinion, right? It's really when you have almost a verbal agreement on value and that there's next steps being established. That's when you should really start planning together all the way through impact, right? And again, to your point, this becomes a really excellent driver during your sales cycle to create that urgency, right? So if you're able to sit down and say, well, actually, hey, I know you wanted to, get set up in January 1st, but implementation is going to take 3 months. That means we really have 3 weeks that we need to get this contract executed in order to kick off the implementation and go live date for you to hit the impact and the goals that you want. Now, all of a sudden, the conversation changes, right? And that's where I think it could be especially important. The earlier you introduce it, and that's also kind of, I think, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it tells you who's the most engaged, who's the most bought in, but it also lets you disqualify deals that aren't serious, right? If they're not willing to work with you on the decision process and the criteria and all of these next steps, then you may not really have the right opportunity that you're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Peter for pointing out doing discovery as a good resource for mutual action plans, and that is a good that's a good time to pile on. But you know, one of the things is that I love reading other sales books. There's always something that you can pick up in another sales book. So in addition to doing discovery, the other one that I will highly recommend now is the Jolt Effect. Right, Jolt Effect was written by Matthew Dixon. Matthew Dixon wrote the Challenger Sale, and this is a new book. It came out this summer, so if you haven't read it yet, I think it's a fantastic read. He talks about the biggest impediment to people's purchasing right now is buyer indecision, or their inability to decide and move forward. Right, and one of the top recommendations that he learned top sellers use to overcome indecision is mutual action plans. So mutual action plans are a key component to jolt selling up next. The reason why the mutual action plans are so important for de-risking a situation is that it takes a lot of the uncertainty out of the buyer's journey. Right?
Yes.
So this is an important consideration for this. One of the things that we can thank you, Crystal, for we're not even getting on a, what do you call it, plan?
Kickback.
Affiliate. We're not even on an affiliate plan for that. So we should have we should have programmed that. But the important thing is, and you guys can write it in the chat now, how many of the people you're talking to are purchasing technology for the first time in their organization in that role? Not for the first time ever, but yeah. So Alex is saying most, right? Like my experience, we don't track this like most, many, Mike, right? 75% Oliver, you have at least 50%, at least 50. Like Michael, yeah, too many to be considered the Great Resignation, right?
Yeah.
So most people, and the term we use, or the term I like to use, is that means in their role and in their current company, they are an unsophisticated buyer, right? They're very experienced. They know what they're doing in terms of their role, but they've never bought, and they have no experience buying in their own company, right? And what a mutual action plan does is help them think through the questions that they need to ask internally. Right. Remember, this is a tool to help the buyers buy, not to help you sell. I'm going to show you what a down and dirty Thibault asked the question about. He does it in a Google Doc. I love that, Thibault. I use a Google Doc. I used to use a Google Doc as well. We're going to show you in a moment how Recap can help you. It can help sort of automate that and do something a little bit more sophisticated. So here we go. This is a bare bones basic mutual action plan, right? Mutual action plan to help a customer buy. I purposely kept it simple from a proposal review and agreement, but there obviously you can have more lines in here. The important part is that you need to understand when the customer needs to have impact. Right? If you're selling a solution that somebody says, I need to have my impact, I need to be, live on the 1st of March, great, right? Let's say you're launching a new product and you need whatever something is for enrollment or some compliance check, or I built years ago, I built an online bank for health savings accounts when I was a product manager in healthcare. I needed a know your customer automated tool, but I needed it before we went live. Like there was a deadline. The vendor knew I'm going to make a decision by then, right? So we know, let's say it's March 1st. Now we can start to backward plan. How much time do you need, right? And this is based on our understanding and our estimates. How much time do you need live to get your impact, right? 20 days, 20 business days, great. Usually it takes us 5 days to install prior to that. Implementation takes us 30 days if we have enough resources, right? We have a standard plan here. Now, one of the things we know is that if your average implementation is 30 days, you probably do not have any customers that have a 30-day implementation. You probably have 10 and have 70. Yeah, you need to help them work through that, right? The other thing that we start to do with this is you start to think about how long is it going to take to actually get this signed? How long is it going to take to be legal review, right? Using this to engage with the buyer with certain questions. You'll say somebody like, if I'm talking to Mark, I'll say, hey, Mark, in my experience, a company your size, it usually takes us 2 weeks, 10 business days to get through legal review. What's your experience getting through your legal review?
This is my first time buying here. Maybe I imagine probably 14 days, right?
14 days, 20 days. Okay, let's make it 20 days. Let's make it 3 weeks to be conservative, right? Who owns it on your side? Who owns it on my side, right? So I'm responsible for sending the legal document. Who is the legal review going to get that name from Mark, right? And what you sort of get back to is like, this is a key day for us, right? This sign date. This sign date, what that means for us from a commitment perspective, this is the close date on your CRM. Not the critical
Chris,
event date. This is the close date on your CRM. Go ahead, Mark.
no, I love this. And one thing I was actually going to bring up, right? So what you did something that obviously you and I take for granted, which was assigning an owner on both sides, right? So through our platform, we've had 35,000 different deals go through a system. There was a incredible stat. Just by assigning a next step to a client with a due date and a clear owner, so putting their name there and saying December 15th, the outcome of it was more than 75% likely to be completed. And if you had multiple people on the same plan, it was more than 100% more likely to be completed, right? So for example, if you had a 30% chance that step was going to be done on time, it now went to 60, right? And so just the factor of what you said, which was the accountability and using this almost as a disqualification tool, becomes so powerful in that area.
Right. And that was someone mentioned that earlier in the chat, is sometimes you use this to disqualify people. Right.
Yeah.
You use this to disqualify people. Like if you're champion, this is one of the things that people throw out the term champion a little liberally sometimes. Right. A champion is somebody who gives you inside information. A champion is somebody who wants you to win the deal. Right. Learning how to cultivate a champion is a very important skill. If your champion's not willing to tell you who that person is that should be doing it, you may not have a real champion. you may not have somebody who's fighting for you to get the deal, and it's important to figure that out earlier on. But you use this as well. To that point, is that you're using this with your champion to say, like, if this one of these is, you can edit this, by the way, with your champion, right? So I need an intro to procurement. Like, I need to talk to the procurement person, right? Asking the client, who on procurement can I talk to? When can I get an introduction to that? Or on very senior deals, when you're trying to multi-thread, right? What we want to do is maybe we want to intro the SVPs together. Like, hey, my boss, my CRO wants to talk to your chief financial officer on this deal, or whatever that is. By putting these things in, when does that task happen? You will identify, if there's somebody who has some indecision. If they're not going to introduce you to procurement, if they're not going to introduce the two more senior people, sometimes even the two CEOs, right? We need to find out, okay, this is something that's preventing this deal from moving forward. What do I need to do in order to get that introduction? All right. So that's how we start to use this to help drive the conversation. And it's an early warning signal when things are not being filled out properly.
If we can change pace a little bit, I guess, right? Because I love what you're talking about here, right? It's the mutual action plan, it's next steps, it's accountability, right? Oliver had a great question here, right? What about combining a mutual action plan with helping them with a business case development document to sell internally, right? Because when I think about mutual action plans, right, the next steps are a very, very important piece, but I think it's a very small piece of their overall plan, right? Because not only should you have the next steps listed out, but you should also have the qualification questions in there, right? You should have medpic in there. You should have bands, whatever else you need, right? You should also have content and resources, right?
Mhm.
Because and Oliver, this is where I think a good mutual action plan is a series of next steps that need to be done, right? In order to get the deal across the finish line for customers to see. A truly amazing plan is something that it allows your buyer or your champion to print that out, share it, copy and paste it, take it within the organization and use that as a tool so that you don't have to be in the room, right? Because 95% of the time when those conversations are happening, you aren't in the room, right? So that's how you start leveraging it and really, and more than happy to talk about this, at great length. Craig Hanahan, also, it sounds like you guys have a great process,
Yeah.
which I'm very familiar with, but yeah, it's,
That's a so it's a great, so put it in another one. Let's what do we want to do? We want to finalize the ROI. Let's do that,
yeah,
right? Who needs to be involved on your side? Who needs to be involved on our side? Right? If that's what your customer needs, again, it's to help them buy. So this is a great one. So Oliver's great point. Like, so all of those steps that are involved, who needs to see the demo? Do we need to see a second or third demo? One of the things we talked about a little earlier is that using a mutual action plan and identifying this helps you prevent repeating steps, right? How
yeah,
many of you had to do 3, 4, 5 demos for an organization? It's not necessarily a bad thing if you're continually going up the chain in different departments. Right. But if you have to just re-demo quite often because we failed to identify somebody early in the process, our sales cycle's getting longer, our productivity is going down, all of these bad things that are happening to us. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oliver, great question, right? Do we expand the map to be a larger biz case, with cost of doing nothing, proposal solution? In my opinion, absolutely. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So Oliver, if it's so there's just a couple things about buyer psychology, right? Is that the plan and the tasks need to be as long as they need to be to get to help the buyer buy, right? But if this was 1,000 lines long, right? The psychology behind that is just it looks too daunting. So you're gonna have to section it up, right? Or spread it out a little. So you don't want to make it look too long and too complex. You don't want to scare them away from the complexity, but you don't want to miss a step either. So sometimes you can section and have things do that. The other thing about psychology is, you notice when I started this, I like to start a mutual action plan with a couple of check marks done already, right? So we're already into the buyer's journey. We're not starting new. We've already done it. You may already have a demo there. You may already have discovery. You may put spiced in there if we use spiced, or problem identified or problem agreed upon, stuff like that. So depending on what the milestones are from the customer's perspective, you want to usually have 2 or 3 check marks off in the beginning there.
Yeah, no, I love that, right? Especially, I mean, because I think there's such a clear match, right, between, methodologies and the implementation, right? The way we think about this, right? Like Spice and Winning by Design, you guys bring the why, and then the framework and the blueprint, or the mutual action plan is almost the how, right? Let's implement it, let's get it done. I guess question for you, Chris. We talked a lot about enablement and collaboration and kind of like setting these next steps, but if you're a leader and you're overseeing an revenue organization, what are your thoughts about consistency? How do you think mutual action plans factor into, repeatability?
This is the big thing that I'm excited about, with Recapped, and how people are now applying technology to these common problems. Because the way I manage this when I use this, when I'm running organizations, is I just have people copy the spreadsheet, right? Copy the
Yeah,
spreadsheet and put a link in Salesforce in a field that I have mutual action plans, right? And then we'd
yeah,
have to go through and link through all of those to come to this spreadsheet to do that, right? And part of that management, which I found doing, is that I like to create what I call reports you don't want to be on. right? And a report you don't want to be on, like if you have demo stage is stage 2 or 3, whatever it is, and then evaluation, maybe that's stage 3, is that if you have an opportunity in stage 3 that does not have a mutual action plan, you'll show up on a report, right? And you just don't want to be on that report, because I'm going to ask you about it in our next deal review session. And we're going to be damn sure that you have that it was you start a mutual action plan, that you're going to start that conversation with your customer, right? That's how you manage that. One of the things about mutual action plans and technology is that this is great on a deal by deal case. As a user, I may be managing 20 of these, depending on my opportunity in my pipeline. I could easily be managing 20 of these. But if I'm leading a team of 8 enterprise reps who each have 20 of them, that's 160 mutual action plans, right? I need some help. I need some help prioritizing how to do that. So Mark, how do I do that?
You mean you don't want to jump between 160 different spreadsheets on a given day?
Nope. I need to know the top 5. One of the things that I am going to do, by the way, before we get to Mark, is one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize, right? I'm going to look at this mutual action plan and I'm going to confirm, is this close date, does this align, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times we see like, oh, they need impact by January 1st. It's a 3-month implementation. It's going to close in November. I'm like, the customer is going to fail if that's it, right? The customer critical event and the close date and what we know to be a good implementation needs to align, right? But I'm clearly, as a manager, I'm focused on now, I'm like coming in the 4th quarter, I'm prioritizing anything with the close date in the 4th quarter in that mutual action plan, and I'm looking for blanks, right?
Yeah.
No blanks, no TBDs. That's how you manage these.
Absolutely, right. And I love what you said about the report you don't want to be on part of, right? Hey, this deal stage 3, it's $25,000 or more. There's a mutual action plan that's missing. That's a red line, right? So shameless plug, we'll talk about how kind of Recap does this. Again, I think the most important thing is if you're not doing something, just start small, right? We have a free spreadsheet template we'll share with you. Chris also has one, and Winning by Design team that they created. We'll share all of this with you afterwards in an email. Something is better than nothing, especially if you have a complex process where your buyer is buying for the first time. You want to enable them. You want to go the extra mile. And if you could take one thing, what take away from this entire thing is for 2023, I think going that extra mile, focusing on buyer experience, that's going to be the separation between vendors that win and become partners or vendors that end up losing, right? So by doing this, you are going the extra mile. You are separating yourself. That, I think, is the competitive advantage. Really quick, and then we'll spend 2-3 minutes on this, and then we'll open it up for Q&A because it sounds like we have a lot of great questions coming in. But everything we said we could do with the spreadsheet, I was in the same place, right? I was a VP of sales. I used to use spreadsheets when I was closing deals. It becomes a nightmare managing them, right? And for me, I wanted to just give a better, easier experience for my reps, right? And I wanted to create this kind of framework that they could just follow to be better at their jobs, right? And to, if someone's joining the organization for the first time, they don't know how to run a POC or they don't know how to do an enterprise deal. Let's give them that framework so they have internal steps and content, right? And I think Peter and a bunch of other people were asking questions, but as a leader, this is what I work out of, right? So this is in Recapped, it's in our platform. We have an insights tab. Every single one of those mutual action plans, when we share it with a customer, we're able to track their engagement within here. What are they looking at? Who are they sharing it with? Are they leaving comments? And what we do that's really interesting for us, and this is how we forecast, is we're able to map it on a day-by-day basis, right? So for example, if Crystal or someone is coming to me and saying, I have this hot deal, it's going to close at the end of the quarter, 100% guaranteed. And then we look and it's this purple line down here. It's something is off, right? Something doesn't make sense. Now, on the flip side, I, as a leader, first and foremost, want to focus on winning what's winnable. And those are the orange and the brown slide ones here that, I know internally, once we hit in the 60s, we're winning that opportunity, or we have a 95% chance of winning that opportunity, right? Because engagement and velocity is the driver. So as a leader, I'm able to come in here, look at all the different deals that I'm working, right? I can then dive in and drill into that workspace, right? And actually, what I'd love to do is even showcase some of the, winning by design spice template that we worked on to create. So I can load this mutual action plan and combine not only the next steps, but really creating a single platform that consolidates all of this in one place, right? So for example, we have maybe a little bit of a welcome block, key criteria. All of this is customizable. These are all components that can be changed and tweaked. The next steps, right? Like Chris mentioned, we're really just taking that to the next level. Right. So now we have, evaluation, we have a proof of concept. Maybe it's internal for now, but let's go ahead and show it to the client. And then within that, we have a framework of internal steps that you can assign to your team members. Maybe you need a pricing proposal from someone else on the team, or maybe you need, you need your manager to review something, right? Tag them, bring them in here, bring the customer in here, and the goal of this, and I love that Peter was asking that, is how do you make this usable by your champion throughout the organization, right? When you're not in the room, they could take this link and they could share it. Hey, look, I'm evaluating XYZ products. One of them actually went kind of above and beyond. They created this page for us. Here's everything that we talked about is in there, right? Pricing proposals, case studies, legal contracts, webinars, anything you mention, it's all in here, right? And then on the internal side, you can really just manage your entire deal and account in one place, right? So here's that SPICE framework, right, that we talked about, that Winning by Design is so known for, right? Being able to utilize all of that, and then, and this is my favorite part, is being able to actually sync that back to your CRM. So you don't have to open up Salesforce, and you don't have to do a spreadsheet. You can literally manage your entire deal and your opportunity in one place. So, and this is kind of one of my favorite things to do, is we have a firm belief here that your methodology and your question, you should make that as client facing as possible so that you can be on the same page, right? So you can actually take this, you can tailor the questions and the labels and actually collaborate with your champion on this, right? So instead of maybe a close date, maybe you have a go live date, right? But it still feeds to your close date in Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever your CRM is, right? And this is, in my opinion, kind of where we're seeing the next wave, right? We had CRM start 20 years ago. Salesforce was invented. Then the last 10 years really have been focused around sales enablement. I think the next 10 years are going to be completely around buyer enablement. And this is kind of the chance for companies to get ahead of the curve, right? Imagine buying Outreach or Gong or SalesLoft 7 years ago when no one knew about them, right? They had 4 or 5 years of competitive advantage before it became a must-have that you just needed to compete. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but I think this is the next wave, right? And this is where the competition will happen. It's buyer experience, it's going above, it's enablement, it's consistency, it's all of these things really wrapped into one. And obviously, I get very excited about this, but
and basically what I agree with is that if we think about the changes of the buyer's journey in the last, in the last 20 years, right? I mean, what the internet has basically done is that buyers are coming in to the buyer's journey deeper and deeper into the cycle, right? This is why we don't use the funnel anymore. The funnel leads come in the top, right? That's what this is. What do we have here? Where's your? Let me go back. I like to jump around. This is this is what the traditional funnel looks like, right? Leads come in the top, things come out the bottom. That's what the traditional funnel is. That's not how people make buying decisions anymore, right? They usually come in, they research you on, online. They're coming in, they may be switching. If they're ripping and replacement, they already know what their problem is. They're looking for a selection criteria, right? So the buyer is coming in deeper into the buyer journey has been happening for 20 years, right? This is just the latest extension of that. I wanted to get back to what is the other question? Brian asked, what do you think about Gantt charts and about Gantt charts? All right, here's my thought about Gantt charts. And I think Gantt charts, depending on what they're saying, like charts in of itself are not good or bad. The question is, are they giving me the right information? I don't have a Gantt chart in front of me, but what I'll tell you is that most Gantt charts are critical timelines of this path, right? It's just a critical timeline, and there's this like, you know, so there's Gantt charts. I can probably create one here if I had 10 minutes to do it on the fly, right? What they don't tell you most of the times, unless you really program them to have like exploding things, is that what task there in that critical timeline is at risk. What task there has not been identified, what task there does not have an opening, and stuff like that. So the Gantt chart is really good, you know, for the purpose of saying, hey, if you want to achieve your critical, you know, your critical event, you need to make a purchasing decision by this day, right? That helps the buyer buy, and it helps them communicate it internally that, hey, we need to make this decision by November 23rd if we want to hit that March 31st line. That purpose, Gantt charts are great. But for some of the other purposes leading up to that, it doesn't supply enough information. So using it for the purpose that it's best suited for, right? We like to use mutual action plans to help identify gaps in the process. Okay. What else we have?
Let's say it looks like we actually. So Charlie, actually, I would love to take this, right? So, how do you think about Recapped in the sense of product-led growth, which we're seeing a lot recently, right? We're actually, you know, we're as an organization, we are actually doubling down on product-led growth, right? And with that, we're going to be obviously using mutual action plans on every deal, but it goes to, I think, what Chris was talking about earlier, where customers are now expecting less friction, they're expecting more results, and they're expecting them quicker, and they want to be able to know what's going on before they talk to a sales rep. Product-led growth is really just the latest, you know, buzzword around that. So for us, I think of, you know, getting them to that stage works, but you still are going to have to. Product-led growth is not going to land you an enterprise deal, right? You still need to go through procurement. You still need to go through security and legal. It's really just creating the opportunity for you to create an opportunity, in my opinion. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
So like what product-led growth is, I'm going to go back to the buyer's journey, right? Product-led growth usually just means that a customer doesn't have to talk to anybody on this journey, right? Or to get impact. That's what product-led growth is. Some systems require human interaction and other types of customization. And I think Frank is joking, is that the latest, right? You know, earlier in my career, when it was called freemium, that's what product-led growth was. People try it first, and then you try and convert them, or it's just an online free trial, and then you convert them, whatever. And obviously, there's multiple flavors of all of those. Product-led growth is what people are focusing on and talking about today, the same way they were focusing on account-based marketing, 3 years ago or 4 years ago. It's the latest buzzword, and 20 years ago it was freemium. It was a freemium model. So that's all it is that if your product is easy enough to understand that somebody can go through the buyer's journey without a human interaction or a demo or an explanation, that's awesome, right? That's a better customer user buyer journey, right? Most products are not that, though, which is why there's a differentiation.
Well, and even if someone does go through the, let's say, PLG format, right, and they buy a single license or a couple licenses, that's it, right? It's still not in that. You still aren't going to be able to go through and buy a 6-figure, or 7-figure deal just without ever talking to anyone, right? Because there's a lot on the line, and you need the seller to be a trusted consultant when that happens.
Okay, let's see. Apologies, we cover this. Can you walk through your sales process? I imagine the head of sales in the final call, but to the contrary, the sales enablement. So I think this question is more for you, Mark. Can you walk through your sales process?
Yeah, let's see. Let me just read.
You imagine the head of sales makes the final call, but on the contrary, the sales enablement and sales engineering teams are likely the users. So how do you garner buy-in across the subgroups?
Yeah, Charlie, great question. So we've been really big fans of what we call kind of like the hamburger go-to-market. So we have product-led growth going bottoms up, account executives using us, TSMs, solutions engineers, anyone that's involved in this deal collaboration and deal management, using us on free trials or on single licenses. And then we also go down to their VP of sales enablement. And we like to think of the sales leader in this case as kind of, they're not quite the quarterback. They're the one that has the idea, but it's going to be enablement and ops that's going to be executing on it, right? So we need to have all of these people aligned. So that way we have the vision, which sometimes comes from the VP of sales or the CRO, partnered with the execution of enablement and ops, right? And that's really what they're trying to do in that organization anyways. So hopefully that answers. It looks like Mike Middleman also had a question here as well.
Customers don't want to look at another spreadsheet. Don't want to use an accounting tool. My experience with customers is that customers are willing to, a real customer will go through the buyer's journey, right? So one of the things that we see a lot, this is a little bit off topic, is that people rush into a demo too fast because the customer asks for it. And most of the time they're wasting sales engineering resources because key people are kicking tires, right? So real customers will go through a buyer's journey. And my experience is that a real customer, if you're showing them even a spreadsheet that's going to help them make a better purchasing decision, they're willing to do that. They're willing to make that type of an investment. Now, you don't want to make it too complex. I said, you don't want to, psychologically scare them off with 1,000 lines and make it too daunting. Right? But it's something that you usually collaborate with together, important, with your champion in the beginning. With your champion, not with, you don't go to procurement with the mutual action plan. You work through with your champion to help them purchase and succeed. So one-on-one customer, you don't just send a link and be like, hey, fill out this spreadsheet for me. Yeah, to that point, they're not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, it's funny when I was thinking about, one of the reasons why I started Recapped is, we were working really, really complex deals, right? And we were asking for a lot from our customers. And even though we were using spreadsheets and they were good, something about it to me from a vanity standpoint kind of just felt wrong. I was like, hey, you're about to give me $100,000. Here's a spreadsheet, right? I wanted to kind of go that extra mile like we talked about earlier. But yeah, something is better than nothing. Crystal, you're so spot on. So what other questions do we have? We got 5 minutes. Let's hear it. Chris and I here. Happy to help in any way that we can. All right.
Okay, what I'd like to do then, as anyone else is thinking about your final questions, in the chat, go into the chat now. What was your biggest takeaway of this session? So if anyone had a big takeaway, what was your big takeaway of this session? All right, and then I'll answer the other question. Sorry, how would you recommend using a similar framework when still founder-led sales stage? So Darren, I've been a founder-led sales. I've been employee number 3, first VP of hire. I've been employee number 2. I work with a lot of founders, helping convert from founder-led growth to first sales teams. And it really is, if you're selling a complex deal, if there's a decision process and stakeholders involved, I institute this right away. Because particularly for founders have the benefit of having that I'm a founder title and that passion that they have. They need to transfer that passion to their sales team, and they instinctively get meetings with people who help the decisions go through in the first 5-10 sales that needs to be replicated. And that gets into the mutual action plan. Like, you have to teach your salesperson, hey, this is what I did. These are the stakeholders I align. This is how I align them. Right. So this is how you need to do that. So definitely effective for founder-led growth.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, something we always hear is, oh, I wish I would have implemented this a year ago before we scaled. Right. Because the best time to plant a tree is a year ago. The second best time is today. Right. So before you scale, you want to create this foundation. Right now, if you're working one deal a year or something, maybe you can get by without it. But you want to create, like Chris mentioned, that foundation for excellence and what great actually looks like, and really enable your reps you really want to clone yourself. And then eventually you want to clone your reps or your best reps. Right. And I'm loving these takeaways. Great idea here, Chris.
Which one? Takeaway: the use of maps starts much earlier in the process than I expected. Totally makes sense. Yep, Jonathan. Absolutely. And from my point of view, it can happen, like I said, it can happen a couple different places. You start to use a mutual action plan. The key moment is when after you've identified the pain that your champion wants to solve, it's the person who has the most to gain internally from that, and you show them that your solution will solve that, usually after a demo, or they may come in not needing to see a demo because they've seen it somewhere else or it's so highly recommended. That's when you introduce the mutual action plan. Great, we can help you. What's the process to help you get to the impact that you want, right? And it starts with a conversation, and then you can let them talk, and then you're like, okay, here, we have a spreadsheet that we like to use. Here's a couple things, and then you start going through that question. Like, so it's introduced once you know you can solve somebody's problem. And I'll even take it a step further, right? I feel it's your duty. It's our duty as salespeople. Like, if you know you can solve somebody's problem, it's your obligation to help them solve that problem. And if you know that more than 50% of the time they probably don't know how to do it, it's your obligation to help educate them in how to do that. Right? That's why I feel so passionate about these things, is that we know this. We know that we can solve their problem. Our technology has done it for other people. And we know that they probably don't know how to buy technology internally. Right? So we have to help educate them, right, and get through any uncertainty and de-risk and all of those other things. And the mutual action plan is the best tool to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? What is sales ultimately? It's solving someone's problem, right? It's not convincing them to buy your solution or anything like that. It's really helping someone see impact and fix the problems that they had before they talk to you, right? Ultimately, and that's what makes a great partnership. So.
Okay, great stuff. Oh, Craig, the background's mysterious and everything like that. Wait till you see, like, ooh, I got all sorts of funny things going on here. Yeah, I didn't get to the drawing, but that's I'm in space because I have special effects every now and then.
Yeah, don't get Chris started on OBS and background and changing cameras. He's got a CNN worthy studio back there. So
yeah.
Awesome.
And the other one again, and Ryan, I'll ask you one of your big takeaways: mutual action plan to impact. Customers are buying impact; they're not climbing a signed MSA SOW. Right? Really important takeaway.
Chris, how can everybody find you? How do people get a hold
connect
of you?
with me on LinkedIn or just chris@winningbydesign.com. We'll put it in the recap. Yep. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Feel free to reach out to myself, Chris. Anything you guys need, we're here. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us. And hopefully you got something of value and got some takeaways that will help you and your business in really these trying times. But here to support you in any way that you can. We'll have a lot more of these coming out shortly. Chris, hopefully we'll have you back if you'll allow it. And we'll get maybe some of the speakers in here, or the chat attendees in here will be on our next calls. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.